Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. Back again to bring you the Mythic Plus guide to the Underrot. Everything you need to know about completing this instance, and what are the most deadly parts of it. Starting off, big parts of trash, especially on a fortified, is going to be the Blood Matron. You'll see this quite a bit in this kind of opener that's going to go out here. You will charge a random enemy and just put out a Savage Cleave. This cleave, of course, you can just bypass, you can just step away from. The initial hit is very low, but the dot that she leaves behind is crazy strong. So getting hit by the dot almost guarantees that you're going to be dying, right? You also will have to watch out for this little Fetid Maggot that goes out, and of course we'll just have a little frontal that'll just kind of spew out. Always important to make sure you know which end is the front, just make sure you're able to dodge that. Moving on, you will be having some of the Blood Priests and some of the Headhunters. Very important to watch out for the Headhunters, as they do put out a number of traps that will just root you in place, and they target one player and they instantly root you at the end of the cast, so it's not something that you're able to easily dodge. And this does get quite a bit more difficult when you actually have to deal with the Matrons and the Headhunters at the same time. Big priority target is definitely going to be the Blood Priests, though. They do have some very nasty Gift of Cahoons, which is just a considerable buff, which can really just ruin your key. So right here, as you're seeing, we focus it down and we get rid of it. On either side of the group, when you enter the instance, are Blood Ticks. These explode upon death and deal an incredible amount of damage, so it's really a big pain to deal with. Moving on a little bit further, you will have this combination of the Matron along with the Headhunter. This is in particular very dangerous because of, like we've seen already, the Matron will have her charge, but it will also combined with the Headhunter's root. So right here, you're getting rooted in place and you're not able to step out of the cleave. You get hit by the cleave, it's very easy to die to it. You can use some displacement. I believe you can use knockbacks. You can definitely use grips, just to be able to kind of get the Matron off you and be able to make some space for yourself. Keep in mind, it usually will be targeting ranged players, so if you're very melee heavy in your group, you may want to just make sure everyone stays kind of close together to make sure that the cleave damage is still possible here, and to be able to quickly get on top of those adds, quickly get on top of them, and be able to remove them from the group here. Overall, like I said, the Headhunters besides the root are not too crazy, but when they're combined with the Matron, they're extremely deadly. After that, like I said, on either side, you will have to deal with a more central pack here, again comprised of not only the Headhunter, but also this Befouled Spirit that just kind of sits in the middle of the room. Having the Dark Omen cast, which is not interruptible, makes it just a priority target to deal with. Does deal quite a bit of single target damage to each player, so it's very important that they're going to be able to be focused healed, and you just destroy that ad as quickly as you possibly can here. Again, after that, you're going to be focusing onto the Blood Priests and that Gift of Cahoon, which must be, of course, interrupted, and the Dark Reconstruction there to make sure that they're not going to be healing up, getting any other kind of buffs to the rest of the group. It can be such a pain. There's so many casts from the Blood Priests that must be dealt with. So this is in particular a very lethal trash pack when you are on teaming. And moving on to the first boss here, it's Elder Leaxa. All of her abilities over the course of this fight will not only put a dot upon you, but also a healing absorb effect. So taking damage in general means that you just have to focus heal those targets to remove it, but usually the debuff isn't too crazy heavy. She will, of course, cast the Sanguine Feast, which basically just a little AoE effect that will kind of one-shot you when you're on higher level keys. Very important to watch out for that. You do have the Creeping Rot, which is just this slow-moving green pool that just shoots out towards a player. And then, of course, you're going to have the Blood Mirror. Leaxa will periodically spawn these blood mirrors that just replicate all of the abilities you've already seen. So, of course, you just have to watch out for Creeping Rot. Make sure anybody that does take any damage is getting healed up past the ticking damage and is healing through the debuff, which can stack. And, of course, you're watching out for the Blood Feast there, which can completely one-shot players. So, really, pretty simple boss. Just watch your feet, focus down any of the adds very quickly, and then you'll be able to get her down no problem. Moving on from Leaxa, you're going to be going on to more like the Rot and Bug type wing that's going to be coming up. Important adds to watch out for are these Bloodswarmers, especially in a fortified key, as they do just fixate and endlessly attack these players. They kind of will rotate through different players to do. And of course, they will just have a Sonic cast, which can interrupt and deal quite a bit of damage. So it's always important if you can kick those to do so, but also make sure that you're not casting so you're not going to get interrupted during that period here. The best way to deal with these Sonic Screamers, or the Bloodswarmers rather, is to actually slow kite them. And what I mean by that is you don't want to blink away and be a very far distance away, but you basically want to stay like just out of melee range, and ideally try to keep those adds just outside of melee range, just enough away from you so that they really can't be meleeing you, but they're also not going to charge you. Because if you blink away, if you push them back, if you grip them away, they'll just instantly charge the target, right? So you have to stay 4 or 5 yards away from them and continuously slow. Things like Blizzard, Frozen Orb are excellent for them. Once you're getting past those Bloodswarmers, you always have to watch out for a couple other adds, namely going to be the Diseased Lashers, which will have a Decayed Mind cast, which is not too difficult because you can interrupt it, you can just stun these ads, you can CC them, but when you are pulling a lot of them in together, it can be quite nasty. So this Decayed Mind is a disease that is dispellable by certain classes that can get rid of diseases, but it also can be healed through, and it basically just stuns the target for like 30 seconds unless you dispel it or unless you heal through it. So taking advantage of like our ice blocks to be able to get rid of it, making sure that there's a priority target, or you're waiting for all the casts to go off, because you can have 2 or 3 of these Lashers actually cast into the same target at the same point. So it's always important to watch out for those. You will have the Living Rot here as we're entering into Cragmaw's room. And while this is a very big and sprawling room, because of how this boss works, a lot of times it is very important to actually deal with the trash early, because the boss, as we'll go into in a little bit, can actually just cast all over the place and can end up pulling more mobs than you really want to. So in many ways, it is a little bit safer just to actually clear out a lot of this trash before you do go into the boss fight. Going up against Cragmaw, as we have seen in the past, there are those blood ticks that will be spawning periodically from him. He has basically two or three main abilities here. He'll have a charge, which just targets a random player and will leave behind blood ticks. He will also have an indigestion, where he pukes up blood ticks. And then, of course, he will have his tantrum, which, you guessed it, spawns more blood ticks. They're all basically little maggots or little eggs right now, and you can just step onto them in order to just destroy them before they come out. But if the blood ticks do spawn, then it's more damage that your tank has to deal with. And of course, when they die, they do deal a little bit of damage each. So when you're having, say, 10 or 15 of them coming up at once, and everybody wants to AoE them all down at once, it can very easily just destroy your group. So big thing to watch out for throughout this fight is going to be the tantrum, making sure that everyone's spreading out, dealing with the blood ticks as best as possible, because they do spawn very quickly, so you need to step on them as quickly as you can. Because of how heavy the damage is, a lot of times the healer can just be really focused on healing, but once the tantrum ends, you need to make sure you get back to the wall, and ideally make sure that you're having the boss against the wall, having the charge and the indigestion line up. They basically start stacking maggots on top of each other, which makes it so much easier to be able to step over all of them at once. So ideally, you just have your the boss just aimed at an angle to charge into the wall. Makes it very easy to clean up all the blood ticks, step on all of them, and just watch out for the big damage that comes from tantrum. On killing Cragmaw, of course, you will have some of the skeletons, which will have that bone shields that we've seen in other instances in the past. You'll also be seeing these Grotesque Horrors, which will be periodically spawning throughout the instance. You can kind of see them from their small ground effect as to where they will end up spawning. So you have the option, as you're leading up to Spore Caller, to either go left or right and end up encountering some more of the skeletons, or of course the Grotesque Horrors along the way here. Make sure that you're purging or using Blood Elf Purge as it is right now as an Arcane Torrent to be able to deal with the skeletons. You can use Shackle Undead, of course, as you're seeing here, in case any of the mobs are infested, to be able to provide a CC on it so that the mob will not be able to come up to you. But overall, these mobs aren't too bad to deal with, and it's a lot lighter trash than we've seen thus far throughout the instance. But before the third boss, you will see a couple of these Bloodsworn Defilers. These will periodically just be spawning a small totem, which deals just a moderate burst of damage in a small AoE. It's very important to be able to kind of kill the totem as fast as you possibly can, or just to move away from it very quickly here. Doesn't deal too much damage, it puts a little dot, just get it quickly dispelled, and it shouldn't be too big of an issue. You do have to watch out for any of the AoE, Shadow Bolt, that stuff that can happen from it, but otherwise these mobs aren't too bad as long as you aren't chain pulling them into others here. Third boss of the instance, Spore Caller Zansha, periodically he's spawning a lot of these green mushrooms all across the room, and whenever he reaches full energy, he will detonate all of these mushrooms if any are still left alive, and of course will deal that damage to everybody in the group. So it's very important to make sure that you get rid of these very quickly and efficiently. Two main methods to be able to remove them are going to be using the Shockwave, which is just the frontal cone coming out from the boss towards the tank. This, of course, is a very easy way of being able to get a lot of the mushrooms taken care of. And then there's going to be the Upheaval, which targets 2 players, and requires you just to run out, and it's a small AoE effect that will be able to soak up a lot of the mushrooms away. Now keep in mind that the initial application of the damage, if you run over a green mushroom, isn't too crazy heavy, but the dot damage is quite substantial. So if you have somebody who has a pretty decent defensive, and you have somebody who can dispel diseases like a priest in your group, you can have them, pop a defensive, pop 3 or 4 at once, and then you're able to quickly dispel them before the dot deals too much damage. Immunities like Cloak, Shadows, things like Aspect of the Turtle, all are really good to be able to quickly soak up all of these and then be able to get back onto the boss here. So you might actually have to do those here and there, depending on the quality of your soaks, but especially as a healer, if you're able to dispel yourself, you can soak up 2 or 3, dispel, wait for your dispel cooldown, and be able to get back on into it. Very important to watch out for after that is going to be the volatile pods. So whenever the red mushrooms come out, they will just explode and radiate spores, and by touching any of those spores, you will also get that same dot. So very important not only to be continuously soaking up any green mushrooms you see, but when the spores explode, dodge them, watch your feet here, and then watch for the increasing tank damage that can really start ramping up over the course of the fight, especially if your tank is trying to soak up more of the zones after the shockwaves going out. The trash leading up to the last boss, the Unbound Abomination, isn't too dissimilar than what we've already seen. The last new mob you'll be facing is going to be the Faceless Corruptor, which will of course be having his maddening gaze, which goes out and kind of is a cone, or better to say it's a line of sorts that comes out from his arm that will of course just fear players and just deal quite a bit of damage to them. So it's basically important to watch your feet, not only for where his frontal is going to be going to, but they'll also periodically be spawning tentacles that will kind of swirl around and be able to hit players. So in many ways it's very important to make sure that you're staying away from those, and always just watching your feet throughout these, as they're not too bad to deal with, but pulling 2 together before the last boss can be quite a pain. Moving to the last boss, the Unbound Abomination here. Very important to note that any damage you deal instantly gets absorbed by the boss and turned into blood energy. Now, whenever the boss reaches full blood energy, he will spawn a number of blood visages, and these are the key to actually killing the boss quickly. So it's very important to be able to get good cleave damage onto the boss, but also recognizing how much damage the visages will actually deal to the boss when they die. So it's about 17% of the boss's max HP. So it's very important to know that if the boss is low, you're going to be able to kill it just by killing the visage. It's much more important, for example, to actually kill the visage instead of dealing any damage to the boss here. You will also be helped along by the Titan Keeper, who will not only give you just a large AoE cleansing circle to be able to remove the stacking dot that the boss gives you, but it will also start dealing with some of the visages itself and making it much easier to be able to destroy them. So you will also see that some of the cleansing light, some of the purging corruption that the Titan Keeper will put out can just obliterate one of the ads for you, which makes it a lot easier to just decide where you're focusing your targets into. At this point, it is kind of just an attrition fight as a healer, but it's just a focused target fight as a DPSer to make sure that you're jumping onto the visages and still dealing damage to the tank early on, and then once the last couple ads are spawning, that you focus them down over the course of it. You will have to watch out for, of course, the frontal coming out from the boss here, which will just be dealing a light amount of damage. You should just be able to kite around the outside of the room, watch your feet, and of course getting everybody stacked up together for the cleansing one. Quickly and easily clear it out. Hope you guys enjoyed this quick rundown of the Underrot. Let me know if you guys have any questions or suggestions for future videos. We'll be covering these more as we go into BfA, along with more pre-patch guides for all the healers. So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next time.